I was away on a business trip, FaceTiming my wife every night, same routine, same smile. But one night, as she walked away from the screen, I spotted something on my side of the bed. A Rolex wristwatch. Not mine. I didn't say a word. I just smiled, ended the call, and booked the next flight home. I didn't tell her. I used a spare key. Walked in. Music upstairs. Laughter. I started recording before I even touched the stairs. And when I opened the bedroom door. So here's the thing about business trips. They're basically adult summer camp, except instead of making friendship bracelets, you're making PowerPoint presentations that'll put people to sleep faster than Ambien. My name's Marcus Hale, and I've been doing this corporate circus act for 8 years now. This particular week had me parked in Boston for some fancy financial summit that promised to revolutionize synergistic market dynamics, or whatever buzzword bingo the organizers were playing that quarter. 4 days of sitting in conference rooms that smelled like stale coffee and broken dreams, listening to guys in $1,000 suits explain why their company was the next big thing. Yeah, right. Half these clowns couldn't balance their own checkbooks. But sure, tell me more about your disruptive blockchain solutions, Brad. The days were brutal, panel after panel of finance bros trying to out-alpha each other while I sat there taking notes and wondering if this was really what I wanted to do with my life. But hey, the money was good, and someone had to pay for the mortgage on our little slice of suburban paradise back home. But here's where it gets interesting. No matter how mind-numbing these conferences got, no matter how late the networking dinners ran, no matter if I was 3 sheets to the wind from whatever top-shelf whiskey some hedge fund manager was pushing, I always, and I mean always, FaceTime Jasmine before bed. It was our thing, our ritual, our little slice of normal in the chaos of business travel. She'd be curled up on our couch, usually wearing one of my old college t-shirts that had seen better decades, her dark hair falling in waves around her shoulders. God, she was beautiful. Still took my breath away after 5 years of marriage, which according to every married guy I knew was either a miracle or I was delusional. Probably both. How was your day, honey? She'd ask, and I'd launch into some story about whatever corporate nonsense I'd witnessed. She'd laugh at all the right moments. Make those little sympathetic sounds when I complained about the hotel's paper-thin walls or the guy next to me on the plane who thought deodorant was optional. These calls were my anchor, man. My reminder that somewhere out there, in our house with the leaky faucet and the garden she was always trying to keep alive, someone actually gave a damn about whether I made it through another day of spreadsheets and small talk. Thursday night rolled around, and I was beat. The summit was wrapping up the next day, and I'd already survived 3 days of financial forecasting presentations that could have been emails. I was in my hotel room. One of those generic business joints where everything's beige and the art on the walls looks like it was bought in bulk from paintings that won't offend anyone incorporated. I flopped down on the bed that felt like it was stuffed with cardboard and disappointment, loosened my tie, and hit Jasmine's contact. The phone rang twice before her face filled my screen, and just like that, the day's stress started melting away. "There's my handsome businessman," she said, that teasing smile playing at the corners of her mouth. She was in our bedroom, wearing my old Yankees t-shirt, the one with the hole near the left shoulder that she refused to let me throw away. "Hey, beautiful. Miss me yet?" "Desperately," she said, rolling her eyes in that way that meant she missed me but wasn't about to admit how much. "How was the big important summit today? Did you revolutionize any synergies?" See, this is why I married her. She actually listened when I complained about work, remembered the stupid corporate speak that made me want to bang my head against the wall. We talked for maybe 20 minutes about nothing and everything. She told me about her day, some drama at the marketing firm where she worked, how our neighbor Mrs. Patterson was convinced squirrels were plotting against her bird feeder, how she'd attempted to make that pasta dish I liked, and only slightly burned it this time. It was perfect. Normal. Exactly what I needed. Then she got up to grab some water from the kitchen. "Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back," she said, propping the phone up on our dresser. The screen tilted slightly as she moved, giving me a different angle of our bedroom. That's when I saw it. Right there, on my side of the bed, on my nightstand, sitting pretty as you please like it belonged there, a Rolex. Not just any Rolex, but one of those flashy submariner models that screamed, "Look at how much money I have," from across the room. The kind of watch that costs more than most people make in 6 months. Now, I've got decent taste in watches. I wear a simple Seiko that keeps perfect time and doesn't make me look like I'm compensating for something. But this thing? This was pure show-off material. Too flashy, too new, too not mine. My brain did that thing where it tries to rationalize what it's seeing. Maybe she bought it for me. No, she would have mentioned it. Maybe it was a gift from her company? Right, because marketing firms are known for handing out Rolexes like Halloween candy. Maybe it belonged to her brother who was visiting? Except her brother lived in Seattle and wore a Fitbit he got from Costco. The cold truth hit me like a bucket of ice water. Someone else had been in our bedroom. Someone who could afford to casually leave a $20,000 watch on the nightstand like it was loose change. Jasmine came back into frame, settling back onto the bed with her water bottle, completely oblivious to the bomb that had just gone off in my chest. "So tomorrow's your last day, right?" she asked, her voice as sweet and normal as ever. "What time does your flight to Chicago leave?" Chicago. Right. I had another conference lined up for the following week. She knew my schedule better than I did sometimes. Early afternoon, I managed to say, my voice sounding surprisingly steady. "Looking forward to getting home, though." She smiled that smile that used to make my knees weak. Now it just made me feel sick. "I can't wait to have you back. I miss having you here." The lies came so easily to her. So naturally. Like she'd been practicing. We talked for maybe 5 more minutes, but I wasn't really there anymore. I was going through the motions, saying the right things, laughing at the right moments. All while that watch burned into my retinas like a neon sign flashing. "Your wife is cheating on you." "I love you," she said as we were getting ready to hang up. "Love you too," I replied automatically. And then the screen went black, leaving me alone in my generic hotel room with the biggest revelation of my life. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the phone. I didn't punch the wall or kick the chair or do any of the dramatic stuff you see in movies. I just sat there for a long moment, staring at my reflection in the black screen, and then I opened my laptop. Flight change fee, $200. Worth every penny. The first flight home, 6 a.m. I was going to get some answers. You know what's funny about lies? They're like cheap cologne. The person wearing them thinks they smell great, but everyone else can tell something stinks from a mile away. Jasmine thought I was jetting off to Chicago that Friday morning for another riveting conference about municipal bonds or whatever soul-crushing topic was on the agenda. She even texted me at 5 a.m. with a cute little "safe travels, baby. Kill it in Chicago." 2 hearts message that probably took her all of 2 seconds to fire off before rolling back over to. Well, let's just say I had a pretty good idea who was keeping my side of the bed warm. But here's the thing about being a financial analyst. You get really good at reading between the lines, spotting inconsistencies, and following the money trail. And right now, all signs pointed to my wife being about as faithful as a politician during election season. Instead of heading to O'Hare like a good little husband, I was on Delta Flight 447 back to Hartford, nursing a coffee that tasted like it was filtered through gym socks, and staring out the window at clouds that looked like they were mocking me. The flight attendant kept asking if I was okay because apparently I had the expression of someone who'd just discovered their favorite pizza place was putting pineapple on everything. The whole flight, I couldn't stop thinking about that damn watch. It was burned into my brain like a bad commercial jingle. A Rolex Submariner, probably the 116610 LN model if I had to guess. Black dial, ceramic bezel, the whole 9 yards. Retail price? Around 20 grand, give or take. The kind of timepiece that says, "I have arrived," or more accurately, "I have arrived in your wife's bedroom while you're out of town." I'd screenshotted the FaceTime call before the image disappeared. Yeah, I'm that guy now, the husband taking screenshots of his own bedroom like some kind of digital detective. But there it was, clear as day, sitting on my nightstand like it owned the place. The audacity was almost impressive. Almost. The plane touched down at Bradley International at 10:23 a.m., and I felt like I was in one of those movies where the protagonist is walking in slow motion towards some life-changing confrontation. Except instead of dramatic music, I had the sounds of babies crying and some dude behind me explaining loudly into his phone why his cryptocurrency investments were definitely going to make him rich any day now. I grabbed a cab instead of calling an Uber. Call me old-fashioned, but I wanted to talk to someone who wouldn't rate me 1 star for my conversational skills. The driver was this older Lebanese guy named Samir who had opinions about everything and wasn't shy about sharing them. "You look like someone stole your lunch money," he said, glancing at me in the rearview mirror as we merged onto I-91. Something like that, I replied. Woman troubles? Was I really that transparent? What makes you say that? He shrugged. 23 years driving cab. You see the same look 1,000 times. Men flying home early, jaw clenched, staring out the window like the world owes them money. It's always woman troubles. Great. I was a walking cliché. You want some advice? He continued without waiting for an answer. Whatever you think you know, you probably know. Trust your gut. The gut, it never lies. The heart, the brain, they lie all the time. But the gut? The gut tells truth. Samir the cab driver was turning out to be more insightful than my last 3 therapy sessions combined. I had him drop me off 2 blocks from my house. Call it paranoia, call it strategy, but I wanted to approach this whole situation like the Spanish Inquisition, unexpected and thorough. I walked through our neighborhood, past the Johnsons' house with their perfectly manicured lawn that made ours look like a war zone, past the Miller's place where their teenage son was probably still sleeping off whatever party he'd attended the night before. Our house looked exactly the same as always. White colonial with black shutters, the rose bushes Jasmine had planted last spring that I'd grumbled about having to water, the driveway where I'd taught her to change her oil because what if you're stranded somewhere and need to check your fluids? She'd rolled her eyes and said that's what AAA was for, but she learned anyway because that's the kind of wife she was. Or the kind of wife I thought she was. I stood there for a minute, key ring in my hand, suddenly feeling like I was about to open Pandora's box. Once I walked through that door, there was no going back. No more blissful ignorance. No more pretending everything was fine. No more comfortable lies. The spare key was still hidden in the propane grill on the back deck, tucked behind the little side shelf where we kept the barbecue tools. Jasmine always forgot it was there. One of those little details that seemed charming when we were newlyweds and now felt like evidence of how little attention she paid to the practical stuff. I let myself in through the back door, moving as quietly as possible. The house felt different somehow, like it was holding its breath. Or maybe that was just me, trying not to hyperventilate as I stepped into what used to be my sanctuary and now felt like enemy territory. Everything looked normal. Kitchen was clean, cleaner than usual, actually, which should have been my first red flag. Jasmine only deep cleaned when she was either stressed about something or expecting company. The living room was tidy, throw pillows arranged just so, the coffee table clear of the magazines and random junk that usually accumulated there. It looked like a staged house, like one of those model homes that's too perfect to actually live in. I pulled out my phone and checked the time. 11:47 a.m. If I knew Jasmine's schedule, and after 5 years of marriage, I damn well should, she'd be home for lunch around noon. She'd started this new thing where she came home during her break, said it helped her recharge for the afternoon. Now I was wondering what exactly she'd been recharging with. I moved through the house like a ghost, noting details I'd never paid attention to before. New candles on the dining room table. Fresh flowers in a vase I'd never seen. The good wine glasses sitting out to dry by the sink, the ones we only used for special occasions. Apparently, adultery qualified as a special occasion. I made my way upstairs, each step on the hardwood creaking like it was announcing my presence to the whole neighborhood. Our bedroom door was open, sunlight streaming through the windows, making everything look warm and inviting. The bed was made. Perfectly made. Military corners and everything. Jasmine never made the bed that well. Hell, I wasn't sure either of us made the bed that well. And there, on my nightstand, was the empty space where that Rolex had been sitting just 12 hours ago. Standing in my own bedroom, staring at the empty nightstand where some other dude's 20 grand timepiece had been casually tossed like spare change, I felt like I was in the Twilight Zone. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and forget why you came in there? This was like that, except instead of forgetting why I was there, I was remembering exactly why I shouldn't be. I pulled out my phone and checked the time. 12:03 p.m. If Jasmine stuck to her usual routine, she'd be pulling into our driveway in about 10 minutes, probably with some takeout from that Thai place she loved and I tolerated. The same Thai place where she'd order pad Thai with extra spice and I'd get something mild because my stomach couldn't handle anything more exciting than vanilla yogurt. But then I heard it. Music. Not just any music. Our music. The playlist we'd spent hours curating during one of those lazy Sunday afternoons when we were still in the honeymoon phase and thought building the perfect romantic soundtrack was the most important thing in the world. It was floating up from downstairs, soft and jazzy, with that sultry saxophone that always made Jasmine close her eyes and sway like she was in some old black and white movie. John Coltrane's A Love Supreme, track 3 on our Perfect Evening playlist. I knew because I'd been the one to add it after she complained that our collection needed more sophistication and less classic rock. My blood turned to ice water. She was home, and she wasn't alone. See, here's the thing about being married for 5 years. You learn the sounds of your house like a symphony conductor learns a score. I knew the difference between Jasmine walking around solo, light, quick steps, usually accompanied by her humming off-key, and Jasmine with company, slower, more deliberate, punctuated by conversation. Right now, I was hearing the latter. Laughter drifted up from the living room. Not her laugh alone. I knew that sound better than my own heartbeat. This was a duet. Her bright, musical giggle mixed with something deeper, more masculine. The kind of laugh that comes easy when you're comfortable, when you're not worried about getting caught, when you think your husband is 3 states away talking about municipal bonds with a bunch of suits who smell like desperation and middle management. My hands were surprisingly steady as I pulled out my phone. Muscle memory kicked in. The same calm I used when presenting to hostile clients or explaining why their portfolio was tanking. Compartmentalization, my therapist used to call it. The ability to shove your emotions into a little box and deal with the business at hand. Right now, the business at hand was documenting the end of my marriage. I opened the camera app and switched to video mode. The red record button looked at me like a challenge. Go ahead, it seemed to say. Push me. See what happens. Find out just how deep this rabbit hole goes. My thumb hovered over it for maybe 2 seconds. 2 seconds of still being the Marcus who could turn around, walk back out that door, and pretend this wasn't happening. 2 seconds of maintaining the comfortable lie that my wife was faithful and my marriage was solid, and my biggest problem was whether to invest in tech stocks or stick with bonds. I pressed record. The laughter got louder, more intimate. I could hear movement downstairs, footsteps on the hardwood, the soft thud of someone setting something down on the coffee table, the rustle of fabric. Were they dancing? The thought hit me like a punch to the gut. She used to dance with me to this playlist, barefoot in our living room, her head on my shoulder, telling me I had no rhythm, but she loved me anyway. You're terrible at this, I heard her say, followed by that laugh again. The same laugh she used to save for me. Give me a break, came the male voice. I'm out of practice. Out of practice. Jesus. How long had this been going on? How many business trips had I taken while thinking she was home missing me, when really she was auditioning replacements? I moved toward the top of the stairs, phone held steady in my hand. Each step felt like walking through quicksand. The old Victorian floorboards creaked under my feet, the same creaks I used to curse when I was trying to sneak back to bed after late-night bathroom trips. Now I was grateful for them, because they covered the sound of my approach. We should probably eat before it gets cold. Jasmine's voice carried up the stairs. Practical. Always practical. Even in the middle of an affair, she was worried about food temperature. In a minute, the man replied. I'm enjoying this too much to stop. My jaw clenched so hard I thought my teeth might crack. This too much. Like I was some inconvenient obstacle to their happiness instead of, her actual husband. I reached the top of the stairs and peered down into the living room. From this angle, I could see part of the couch, the coffee table where 2 takeout containers sat next to 2 wine glasses, the good ones, naturally, and the edge of our sound system that was providing the soundtrack to my personal hell. But I couldn't see them. Not yet. The music shifted to something even more intimate. Billie Holiday's The Way You Look Tonight. I'd added that one after our second anniversary dinner, when Jasmine had worn that black dress that made me forget how to form complete sentences. She'd slow danced with me in the restaurant parking lot, not caring who saw us, telling me I was the most romantic man she'd ever met. Apparently, I'd been demoted. I crept down 3 more steps, keeping close to the wall, phone steady in my hand. The angle improved, and I could see more of the living room now. The throw pillows were arranged differently. There was a jacket draped over the back of my chair. Not mine, definitely not mine. Navy blue, expensive looking, the kind of thing guys wear when they want to look sophisticated but approachable. 2 more steps down, and I'd have a clear view of the couch. 2 more steps, and I'd see exactly what my wife had been doing while I was away earning the money to pay for this house, this furniture, this life we'd built together. 2 more steps, and there'd be no going back. The music swelled, Billie Holiday's voice wrapping around the words like silk, and I heard Jasmine sigh, that contented, happy sound she used to make when everything in her world was exactly right. I took those 2 steps. So there I was, standing on my own staircase like some kind of discount private investigator, phone in hand, about to catch my wife in what I was pretty sure wasn't a surprise birthday party planning session. The music was still playing. Now it was Miles Davis doing something smooth and sultry that under normal circumstances would have had me thinking about romance and candlelit dinners. Instead, it was providing the perfect background score for what was shaping up to be the worst matinee performance of my life. I could see them now from my perch on the staircase. Jasmine was on our couch. Our couch, the one we'd spent 3 weekends shopping for because she needed the perfect shade of charcoal, and I needed something that wouldn't show pizza stains. She was wearing that emerald green dress I'd bought her for our anniversary last year, the one that cost more than my first car, but made her look like she'd stepped out of a magazine. And there was Mystery Man, sitting way too close to my wife, wearing that navy jacket I'd spotted earlier over a crisp white shirt that probably cost more than I spent on groceries in a month. He had that whole successful professional vibe going, the kind of guy who probably drove a BMW and knew which fork to use at fancy restaurants without having to think about it. They were sharing pad thai straight from the container, feeding each other like they were in some cheesy romantic comedy. Jasmine laughed at something he said, tilting her head back in that way that used to make my heart skip beats. Now it just made my stomach churn. But here's the kicker. They weren't just hanging out downstairs being inappropriate. Oh no, that would have been too simple. As I watched through the stair railings like a creeper in my own house, I realized they were moving, heading upstairs, toward my bedroom. Well, shit. This was happening whether I was ready or not. I backed up the stairs as quietly as possible, which in a house built in 1987 with floors that creaked if you looked at them wrong, was about as stealthy as a marching band. But they were too busy with their little romantic moment to notice the symphony of squeaks and groans coming from the staircase. I ducked into the guest bathroom and left the door cracked open just enough to see down the hallway. My phone was still recording, which felt simultaneously like the smartest and stupidest thing I'd ever done. Smart because I'd have evidence. Stupid because I was about to have video proof that my marriage was deader than disco. They reached the top of the stairs, and I got my first good look at this guy. He was younger than me, maybe late 20s, with the kind of easy confidence that comes from never having to worry about whether you're good enough. Dark hair, olive skin, probably worked out more than I did. Which, let's be honest, wasn't saying much since my exercise routine consisted mainly of walking from my car to various office buildings. Your husband has good taste, he said, looking around our hallway at the framed photos Jasmine had spent hours arranging. Photos of us. Our wedding, vacations, family gatherings. The whole highlight reel of our supposedly happy marriage. Had, Jasmine corrected, and that single word hit me like a freight train. Had good taste. Past tense. Like I was already dead to her. He's actually a pretty decent guy, she continued, which was rich coming from someone who was currently bringing her side piece into our bedroom. Just boring, you know? Predictable. Safe. Safe. I'd been demoted to safe. The kind of insult that cuts deep because it's probably true. Yeah, I was safe. I paid the bills on time, remembered anniversaries, fixed the garbage disposal when it got jammed. I was a good husband in all the ways that apparently didn't matter anymore. They disappeared into our bedroom, and I heard the door close. Not slam, just close with that soft click that meant they thought they had all the privacy in the world. I stood there in the guest bathroom for maybe 30 seconds, listening to the muffled sounds coming from down the hall, feeling like my entire life was happening to someone else. This couldn't be real. This had to be some kind of stress-induced hallucination brought on by too many conference room donuts and hotel coffee. But the phone in my hand was still warm, still recording, and the sounds from my bedroom were getting more, let's say intimate by the second. That's when something clicked in my brain. Not rage, exactly. More like clarity. The kind of cold, crystal clear thinking you get when you're drowning and suddenly realize you need to either swim or sink. I walked down that hallway like I owned the place. Which, technically I did. My name was on the mortgage, My money had paid for the hardwood floors they were probably about to christen, and my credit score had made all of this suburban bliss possible. The bedroom door was closed, but not locked. Of course it wasn't locked. Why would they lock it? I was supposed to be in Chicago learning about municipal bonds and networking with people who pronounced portfolio like it was a foreign language. I put my hand on the doorknob and took a deep breath. On the other side of this door was the end of everything I thought I knew about my life. My marriage, my future, my belief that I was married to someone who actually gave a damn about the vows we'd made in front of her parents and my parents, and that overpriced wedding photographer who kept telling us to feel the love. I turned the knob and pushed the door open. Not slowly, not dramatically, just opened it like I was walking into any other room in my house on any other day. There they were, Jasmine and her younger, fitter, apparently more exciting replacement, tangled up in our sheets like they were posing for the cover of some romance novel titled, How to Destroy a Marriage in Easy Steps. They froze like deer in headlights. Actually, that's not fair to deer. Deer have the decency to run away when caught. These two just stared at me like I was the one who shouldn't be there. Jasmine's face went through about 5 different expressions in 2 seconds. Surprise, guilt, panic, defiance, and finally something that looked almost like relief. Like she was tired of sneaking around and was ready to get this conversation over with. The guy, and I still didn't know his name, which somehow made this whole thing even more insulting, tried to cover himself with our good pillowcases, the ones Jasmine had insisted we needed because thread count matters, Marcus. I held up my phone, making sure they could both see the red recording dot, and smiled the kind of smile you give when you're about to deliver the punchline to a joke that's not actually funny. Don't stop on my account, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I'm just here for the show. You know what they don't tell you about catching your spouse cheating? It's not like the movies where everyone starts screaming and throwing things and the soundtrack gets all dramatic. Real life is way more awkward than that. It's more like walking in on your neighbors doing karaoke, uncomfortable for everyone involved, and nobody really knows what to do next. The silence in that room was so thick you could have spread it on toast. Mr. Navy Jacket was doing this weird frozen tableau thing, like he thought if he didn't move, maybe I'd forget he was there. Jasmine had gone full deer in headlights, clutching our Egyptian cotton sheets, the ones I'd bought her for Christmas because she said regular sheets made her skin feel scratchy, like they were some kind of protective armor. And there I was, standing in my own bedroom doorway with my phone out, feeling like the world's most unwelcome party crasher. Marcus, Jasmine started, her voice doing that thing where it goes up 3 octaves when she's panicked. This isn't. I mean, we weren't. What? I interrupted, genuinely curious. You weren't naked? You weren't in my bed? You weren't doing horizontal aerobics with Captain Fantastic here while I was supposed to be learning about tax-deferred investment strategies? The guy, let's call him Ken, because he had that whole plastic perfection thing going, finally found his voice. Look, man, I can explain. Oh, this should be good, I said, leaning against the doorframe like I had all day. Please, explain away. I'm all ears. This should be better than cable. Ken started scrambling for his clothes, which were scattered around my bedroom like evidence at a crime scene. His shirt was draped over my reading chair, the one Jasmine always complained took up too much space, but I'd refused to get rid of because it was the one piece of furniture in this house that was purely mine. His pants were in a heap by the window, and his boxers, expensive-looking ones, naturally, were hanging off my dresser. But what really caught my attention was sitting right there on my nightstand, bold as brass and twice as shiny. The Rolex. That $20,000 conversation starter that had blown up my entire world 12 hours ago. I walked over and picked it up, turning it over in my hands like I was examining a particularly interesting specimen. Nice watch, I said conversationally. Submariner, right? The 116610LN model, if I'm not mistaken. Black dial, ceramic bezel, automatic movement. Retail price around 20 grand. Give or take. Ken stopped mid-scramble and stared at me. How did you know about watches? Buddy, I work in finance. Knowing the value of status symbols is part of the job description. I held the watch up to the light, watching it gleam. You know what's funny though? This particular model has been discontinued, which means either you're really into vintage timepieces or... I paused for dramatic effect. You've got a wife who bought this for you as an anniversary gift? Maybe a promotion present, something special like that. The color drained out of Ken's face faster than water down a bathtub drain. Bingo. I'm sure she'll be thrilled to know where her thoughtful gift ended up. I continued, pulling out my phone with my free hand. What was her name again? Oh wait, you haven't mentioned her yet. My bad. Don't, Ken said, and for the first time since I'd walked in, he sounded genuinely scared instead of just embarrassed. Please don't drag her into this. Drag her into what? I asked innocently. Your extracurricular activities? I think she's already pretty invested, don't you? I mean, she did drop 20 grand on this little timepiece. Jasmine had been quiet this whole time, just watching our little back and forth like it was a tennis match. Now she finally spoke up. Marcus, can we talk about this like adults? I laughed, actually laughed out loud, which seemed to surprise all three of us. Adults? Jazz, adults don't fuck other people's spouses in their own beds while their husband is out of town working to pay the mortgage on said bed. She flinched at the language. Jasmine always hated it when I swore, said it was beneath me, and made me sound common. Well, guess what? Apparently being common was the least of my problems. Ken had managed to get his pants on and was working on his shirt, moving like he was defusing a bomb. Look, I should go, he mumbled, not making eye contact with anyone. Oh no, I said, gesturing for him to sit down. Don't leave on my account. We were just getting to know each other. Besides, I feel like we should properly introduce ourselves. I'm Marcus, Jasmine's husband. The boring, predictable, safe one she was telling you about upstairs. And you are. He looked at Jasmine like she might throw him a lifeline, but she was too busy having some kind of internal meltdown to help him out. David, he said finally. David Chun. Nice to meet you, David. What do you do for a living? Besides home wrecking, I mean. That's more of a hobby, right? I'm in real estate, he said quietly. Real estate. Well, that explains the watch. Good market right now. Lots of opportunity. Lots of lonely housewives looking to upgrade their living situations, am I right? David winced like I'd slapped him. Good. I tossed his pants at him like I was clearing out trash after a garage sale. Your shoes are downstairs, I said helpfully. Next to what's left of my faith in human decency. But don't worry, I'm sure you'll find them. You seem pretty good at finding things that don't belong to you. David caught his pants and started putting them on with the kind of desperate efficiency you usually only see in emergency situations. Which I guess this was. Marcus, please, Jasmine said, her voice small and shaky. Can we just what? I cut her off. Just pretend this didn't happen? Just go back to our normal routine where I travel for work and you audition my replacements? Just keep living this beautiful lie we've built together? I walked over to the nightstand and set David's watch down with exaggerated care. Here's what's going to happen, David. You're going to put on your fancy shoes and your expensive jacket and walk out of my house. Then you're going to go home to your wife. And yeah, I know you have one because nobody buys themselves a watch like that. And you're going to think real hard about whether 20 minutes of fun was worth blowing up 2 marriages. David nodded frantically, like a bobblehead in an earthquake. And then, I continued, you're going to pray that I don't decide to send this lovely home movie to everyone in your contact list. Because trust me, buddy, I've got nothing left to lose. You ever notice how a name can go from beautiful to bitter in about 2 seconds flat? Jasmine. For 5 years, that name had been poetry to me. I'd whisper it in the dark when she couldn't sleep, shout it across crowded restaurants when I spotted her coming back from the bathroom, text it with little heart emojis like some lovesick teenager. Jasmine, like the flower, exotic and sweet-smelling and delicate. Now it sounded like nails on a chalkboard, like a word I'd rather forget I ever learned. David was doing his best impression of a man trying to disappear into thin air, fumbling with his shirt buttons like his fingers had suddenly forgotten how clothing worked. The guy who'd been all smooth confidence 10 minutes ago now looked like he'd rather be getting a root canal without anesthesia. Hurry up there, Romeo, I said, checking my phone. Time's wasting, and I've got phone calls to make. That got him moving. Amazing how the threat of domestic destruction can really light a fire under someone's ass. While David performed his frantic getting dressed routine, I kept my eyes on Jasmine. She'd wrapped herself in our comforter, the one we'd picked out together at Bed Bath & Beyond after spending 45 minutes debating thread counts and color schemes. She looked small in there, smaller than I'd ever seen her, like the weight of what she'd done was physically shrinking her. "Marcus," she started again, and I held up a hand. "Save it. Whatever you're about to say, just save it. I've heard enough lies for one day. It's not what you think." "Oh, it's exactly what I think," I shot back. "It's exactly what anyone with functioning eyeballs would think. You've been screwing around behind my back, probably for months, and the only thing you're sorry about is getting caught." David had managed to get his shirt on, though it looked like he'd dressed in the dark during an earthquake. He was edging toward the bedroom door like a man approaching a live grenade, clearly hoping to escape before things got any uglier. "Not so fast, Casanova," I said, blocking his path. "We're not quite done with our little chat." I reached into my back pocket and pulled out his pants, the expensive ones that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. I held them out to him like I was handing over trash for collection day. "Your chariot awaits downstairs," I said pleasantly, "right next to the loyalty you both left at the door." Amazing how easy it is to just step over important stuff when you're in a hurry, isn't it? David snatched his pants like they were on fire, mumbling something that might have been sorry, or might have been hurry, or might have been a prayer to whatever deity protects homewreckers from homicidal husbands. "You know what the funny part is?" I continued, really warming up to this whole controlled fury thing. "I actually liked you for about 30 seconds there, David. Good-looking guy, obviously successful, probably tells great stories at dinner parties. Under different circumstances, we might have been buddies." His face crumpled like a paper bag. "Look, Marcus, I never meant for this to happen." "Sure you didn't," I interrupted. "You just accidentally ended up naked in my bed with my wife. Could happen to anyone. Slip and fall accidents are surprisingly common in the adultery business." Jasmine made this little wounded sound, like she was the victim in all this. Like I was being unreasonable by objecting to finding my marriage in ruins. "Don't," I said, spinning around to face her. "Don't you dare make that sound. Don't you dare act like you're the one being hurt here." "I am hurt," she whispered. "This isn't how I wanted you to find out." "How you wanted me to find out?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "How exactly were you planning to break this news? Skywriting? A fucking PowerPoint presentation?" She pulled the comforter tighter around herself, like it could protect her from the consequences of her choices. "I was going to tell you. After the Chicago conference. I was going to sit you down and explain." "Explain what?" "How you've been test driving my replacement while I was out earning money to pay for this house. How you've been using our bed, Jasmine, for your little midlife crisis experiment." David was fully dressed now, clutching his shoes like life preservers. He looked at Jasmine one last time, and I caught something in that look that made my blood boil even hotter. It wasn't just lust or guilt. It was something softer. Something that looked almost like affection. This wasn't just a fling. This wasn't some random hookup she'd regret in the morning. This was something real. Something that meant something to both of them. That hurt worse than everything else combined. "Get out," I said to David, my voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "Get out of my house, get in your car, and drive away. And if I ever see you within a mile of my wife again, I'll make sure that video gets sent to everyone you've ever met, including your boss, your neighbors, and whatever poor woman is stupid enough to be married to you." He nodded frantically and practically sprinted for the door, still clutching his shoes. I listened to his footsteps pounding down the stairs, heard the front door slam, heard a car engine start and tires screech as he peeled out of our driveway like the hounds of hell were chasing him. Which, in a way, they were. Then it was just me and Jasmine, sitting in the ruins of everything we'd built together, with nothing but the truth hanging in the air between us like smoke from a house fire. The silence that followed David's great escape was the kind that makes your ears ring. You know that feeling after a really loud concert when everything sounds muffled and strange? That's what my life felt like right then. Like someone had cranked the volume up to 11 and then suddenly cut the power, leaving me in this weird, cottony quiet where even my own breathing sounded too loud. I sat down on the edge of the bed. My bed. The bed I'd assembled with my own hands after we moved into this house. Cursing at the instruction manual that was apparently written by someone who thought insert tab A into slot B was sufficient direction for building furniture. Jasmine had sat cross-legged on the floor, reading the directions out loud and laughing every time I muttered something creative about Swedish engineering. Good times. Simpler times. Times when my biggest worry was whether I'd accidentally installed the headboard upside down. Now I was sitting on that same bed, staring at my phone screen, watching the video I'd just recorded. There they were, frozen in digital amber. My wife and her boy toy, caught in the act like deer in headlights. The timestamp showed 12:47 p.m. on a Friday afternoon. The day my marriage officially died, preserved forever in HD quality. Technology is a beautiful thing, isn't it? Marcus, Jasmine said softly. She was still wrapped in that comforter, still looking like she was trying to disappear. Can we please talk about this? Talk about what? I asked, not looking up from my phone. About how you've been lying to me for God knows how long. About how you've turned our home into your personal love nest. About how you just called me boring and predictable to the guy you've been cheating with. She flinched at that last part. Good. I hoped it stung. I never meant for you to hear that, she whispered. But you meant it when you said it, didn't you? I finally looked at her, and I was surprised to find that I wasn't angry anymore. Not exactly. I was something else. Something colder. Something more final. Safe. Boring. Predictable. That's what 5 years of marriage gets me in your book. You don't understand. I understand plenty. I understand that while I was working 60-hour weeks to pay for this house, you were interviewing candidates for my replacement. I understand that while I was missing dinner dates and anniversary celebrations because I was trying to build us a future, you were building a future with someone else. I opened my contacts and started scrolling. Past the work numbers, past the college buddies I never called anymore, past the restaurant delivery places, and the guy who fixed our air conditioning last summer. I found what I was looking for, Leonard Roth. Jasmine's father. Retired Army colonel, Purple Heart recipient, the kind of man who still ironed his jeans and called everyone son, whether he liked them or not. Leonard had never quite warmed up to me. Oh, he was polite enough, shook my hand at family gatherings and asked about work, but I always got the feeling he thought his daughter could have done better, that she'd settled for the safe choice instead of holding out for someone more exciting. Turned out he was right. She had been looking for excitement. Just took her 5 years to find it. What are you doing? Jasmine asked, and I could hear the panic creeping into her voice. Sending a postcard, I said, attaching the video to a text message. Your dad always said communication was key to a successful relationship. Figure he should know how well his daughter learned that lesson. Marcus, please don't. But I was already typing. Simple message. Clean. Professional. The kind of thing Leonard would appreciate coming from his son-in-law. Well, soon-to-be ex-son-in-law. Your daughter's been busy. Send. The message disappeared from my screen with that satisfying little whoosh sound, winging its way through cyberspace to deliver the news that his little princess had turned into exactly the kind of woman he'd raised her not to be. You didn't, Jasmine breathed, but she could see from my face that I absolutely had. I did. And you know what? It felt good. Really good. Like finally telling the truth after months of living someone else's lie. My phone buzzed almost immediately. Text from Leonard. Call me. Now. I showed Jasmine the screen. Looks like Daddy wants to chat. Should I put him on speaker? She was crying now, big fat tears rolling down her cheeks like she was the victim in all this. Like she hadn't been the architect of this whole disaster. He's going to disown me, she whispered. Maybe, I said, standing up and pocketing my phone. Or maybe he'll be proud that his daughter finally showed some initiative. Hard to say with military guys. They're unpredictable that way. I walked over to our dresser. Well, my dresser now, I supposed, and started pulling out clothes. Clean shirt, fresh tie, my good jacket. The one I wore to important meetings and family dinners and other occasions where looking professional mattered. What are you doing? She asked. Getting dressed. I've got places to be, people to see, lawyers to call. Turns out ending a marriage is almost as much work as starting one. Who knew? Where are you going? I pulled on the clean shirt, buttoning it slowly and deliberately. Well, first I'm going to grab some lunch. All this excitement has made me hungry, and that Thai food you two ordered smells pretty good. Shame to let it go to waste. She made that wounded sound again. Then I'm going to drive to Miller and Associates downtown and have a little chat with their divorce attorney. Sarah Miller, I think her name is. Came highly recommended by Jim Peterson. You remember Jim from the Christmas party? His wife decided she needed to find herself last year. Turned out she found herself in their pool boy's apartment. I tucked my shirt in, adjusted my collar. After that, I'll probably swing by the bank and make sure you don't have any more surprises waiting for me. Joint accounts can be tricky that way. Marcus, please. And then, I continued, like she hadn't spoken. I'm going to come back here and start boxing up your stuff. Don't worry, I'll be careful with the breakables. I'm predictable that way. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Leonard. On my way over. I smiled and held up the phone so she could see. Looks like you're about to have some company. Hope you've got something more substantial to wear than that comforter. Your father always was big on proper attire. I grabbed my keys and wallet, checked my appearance in the mirror one last time. I looked good, professional, put together. Like a man who had his life under control, even though everything had just exploded. See you around, Jasmine. It's been educational. And with that, I walked out of our bedroom, down our stairs, past the Thai food containers still sitting on our coffee table, and out the front door of the house we'd bought together when we still believed in forever. The funny thing? For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. You know what's funny about having your entire life implode on a Friday afternoon? The world just keeps spinning like nothing happened. Traffic lights still change from red to green, people still walk their dogs, and somewhere a barista is still asking if you want extra foam on your latte. It's almost insulting how normal everything looks when your personal universe has just been nuked from orbit. I drove around town for about 3 hours, windows down, music up, feeling like I was seeing everything through new eyes. The Starbucks where Jasmine and I used to meet for coffee dates looked smaller somehow. The park where we'd had our first real fight about money seemed less significant. Even our favorite restaurant, the Italian place where we'd celebrated every anniversary, just looked like another building with a decent Yelp rating. It's amazing how quickly places lose their magic when the person you shared them with turns out to be a lying, cheating, apparently very flexible yoga enthusiast. By the time I made it to Sarah Miller's law office, I was in what you might call a productive headspace. Nothing focuses the mind quite like discovering your spouse has been auditioning your replacement while you were out earning the money to pay for her yoga classes. Sarah Miller turned out to be exactly what I needed. A sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who'd clearly seen every flavor of marital disaster the human heart could devise. She took one look at me, poured 2 cups of coffee without asking if I wanted any, and said, "So, who'd she cheat with?" I liked her immediately. Real estate guy named David Chun, I said, settling into the leather chair across from her desk. Younger, better looking, probably makes more money than I do. They usually do, Sarah said dryly, pulling out a legal pad. How'd you catch them? I pulled out my phone and showed her the video. She watched it with the detached professionalism of someone who'd seen it all before, nodding occasionally like she was reviewing a financial statement. Well, she said when it finished, this should be pretty straightforward. Connecticut's a no-fault state, but adultery evidence like this can definitely affect asset division and alimony considerations. How long have you been married? 5 years. No kids, thank God. Assets. House, 2 cars, some savings, retirement accounts. Nothing too complicated. She made notes, asked the standard questions, explained the process with the kind of efficiency that told me she'd done this dance 1,000 times before. File the papers, serve notice, wait for response, negotiate settlement, sign documents, pretend the last 5 years didn't happen. One thing, she said as I was getting ready to leave. Change your locks tonight. Not tomorrow, not next week. Tonight. Trust me on this one. Smart woman. I stopped at Home Depot on the way home and bought new deadbolts, door handles, the whole 9 yards. Then I called Rico's locksmith service. Found them on Yelp, 5-star rating, available weekends. Rico turned out to be this stocky guy in his 60s with hands like baseball mitts and the kind of mustache that belonged in a 1970s cop show. He took one look at me standing in my driveway with a bag full of door hardware and said, "Bad day." "Getting better," I replied. "Woman troubles?" "How'd you know?" He shrugged, pulling tools out of his van. 30 years in this business, you learn to read the signs. Nobody changes locks on a Friday night because they're happy with their living situation. Rico worked fast and didn't ask unnecessary questions, which I appreciated. He installed new deadbolts on the front door, back door, and even the side entrance to the garage. Professional-grade stuff, the kind that would keep out everyone except maybe a team of Navy SEALs with power tools. "She's gonna be pissed when she tries to get back in," he said, testing the front door lock. "That's the general idea. You sure about this? Once I leave, there's no going back. These aren't the kind of locks you can sweet-talk your way through." I thought about Jasmine wrapped in our comforter, David scrambling for his pants. The look on both their faces when I'd walked in on their little afternoon delight session. I'm sure. Saturday morning came early, courtesy of my new reality where sleeping past 6 a.m. was apparently no longer an option. I made coffee, sat at my kitchen table, and watched the sun come up over the neighborhood where I'd thought I was building a future with someone who actually wanted to be there. Around 10 a.m., I heard a car pull into the driveway. Then another. Voices. The sound of heels clicking on concrete. I looked out the front window, and there she was. Jasmine, standing on what used to be our front porch, holding a bouquet of white lilies like she was visiting a grave. Which, in a way, she was. The grave of our marriage. May it rest in pieces. The lilies were a nice touch, I had to admit. My least favorite flower in the world, but she'd never bothered to remember that. 5 years of marriage, and she still thought lilies were romantic instead of what they actually were. Funeral flowers that smelled like death and broken promises. She was dressed like she was going to church or a job interview. In that navy blue dress she wore when she wanted to look responsible and trustworthy. Her hair was perfect, her makeup was flawless, and she had that expression on her face that she usually reserved for dealing with difficult clients at work. The doorbell rang, then rang again, then turned into a sustained assault on my auditory system that would have impressed a Jehovah's Witness. I stood behind the living room curtain, coffee in hand, watching her press that button like it might magically undo the last 24 hours if she just tried hard enough. After about 5 minutes of this musical torture, she moved on to knocking. Not polite knocking, the kind of aggressive pounding usually reserved for police raids and zombie apocalypses. The sound echoed through the house like gunshots, but I just stood there, sipping my coffee, feeling oddly peaceful. She tried the door handle next, rattling it like she thought maybe Rico had installed trick locks that would open if you just believed hard enough. When that didn't work, she moved around to the back door. More rattling. More frustration. I could see her through the kitchen window, standing on our back deck in her funeral flower dress, looking confused and increasingly desperate, like she couldn't quite grasp the concept that actions might actually have consequences. My phone started ringing. Jasmine's ringtone, At Last by Etta James, which had seemed romantic when I'd set it up and now felt like a cosmic joke. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again, and again. By the fourth call, I was actually starting to feel sorry for her. Almost. The same way you might feel sorry for a wasp that's gotten itself trapped in a glass. You understand it's struggling, but that doesn't mean you're going to let it out so it can sting you again. Around noon, a truck pulled up and Leonard Roth climbed out, still moving with that military precision that made civilian life look sloppy by comparison. He was dressed in his standard weekend uniform, pressed khakis, button-down shirt, shoes that could pass inspection. He walked up to where Jasmine was still holding her wilted lilies and said something that made her shoulders sag. Then he looked directly at the living room window where I was standing and nodded once. The kind of nod that said, "I respect what you're doing here, son." They talked for maybe 10 minutes on my front lawn, and I could see Jasmine crying, gesturing toward the house, probably explaining how this was all some terrible misunderstanding, and if I would just let her in, she could fix everything. Leonard listened with the patience of a man who'd raised 3 daughters and heard every sob story in the book. When she finished, he put his hand on her shoulder, said something that made her cry harder, and then got back in his truck. Before he left, he rolled down his window and called out loud enough for me to hear through the glass, "You're a good man, Marcus. You deserved better than this." Then he drove away, leaving Jasmine standing alone on the sidewalk with her flowers and her regrets. That night, she called 17 times. 17. I know because I counted. Each call went to voicemail, and each voicemail was the same mixture of apologies, explanations, and promises that things would be different if I'd just give her another chance. I deleted them all without listening to them completely. Some endings don't need an encore. Monday morning rolled around like the first day of a new job, equal parts terrifying and exciting. I woke up at 5:30 a.m. without an alarm, which was weird because I'm normally the kind of guy who needs 3 snooze buttons and a caffeine 4 just to achieve basic consciousness. But apparently, nothing jumpstarts your circadian rhythm quite like discovering your life is a complete sham. First stop, Sarah Miller's office, where I officially filed for divorce. Turns out ending a marriage is surprisingly bureaucratic. Forms to fill out, fees to pay, boxes to check, like canceling a gym membership, except the gym was your entire life and the cancellation fee was half your stuff. Sarah moved through the paperwork with the efficiency of someone who'd done this dance more times than a wedding DJ. Standard no-fault divorce, she explained, but we're citing irreconcilable differences with a side order of adultery evidence. Should keep things moving smoothly. I signed my name 17 times. 17 signatures to undo what had taken one signature to create 5 years ago. There's probably some kind of cosmic mathematics in that, but I was too busy becoming officially single to figure it out. How long? I asked. 90 days minimum in Connecticut, but given the evidence and the fact that she'll probably want this resolved quickly. Sarah shrugged. For months, maybe less if she doesn't contest anything. For months to completely dismantle a life. It takes longer to grow a decent beard. While the legal wheels started grinding, I decided to tackle the house. Not just cleaning, purging, getting rid of every trace of the life I'd thought I was living. Turns out 5 years of marriage accumulates a lot of lies disguised as shared memories. First casualty, our wedding photo album. You know those fancy leather-bound books that cost more than your first car? The ones where every picture is supposed to capture pure joy and eternal love. Yeah, that thing went straight into the fireplace. Watching our wedding photos curl up and turn to ash was oddly therapeutic. There we were, young and stupid, and convinced we'd figured out something that had stumped humanity since the dawn of time. My 29-year-old self looked so confident in that tuxedo, like he'd won the lottery instead of just signing up for years of elaborate deception. The flames ate through our first dance, our cake-cutting ceremony, that stupid photo where we're feeding each other and laughing like it's the funniest thing in the world. $5,000 worth of professional photography reduced to smoke and regret in about 10 minutes. Next up, Jasmine's stuff. Clothes, shoes, books. That collection of scented candles that made our house smell like a Bath and Body Works had exploded. I wasn't vindictive about it. Didn't throw her things in the yard or donate her designer dresses to Goodwill out of spite. I'm petty, not stupid. Instead, I carefully packed everything into boxes, labeled each one with a Sharpie, and stacked them neatly on the front porch. Professional moving quality boxes from U-Haul, each item wrapped in tissue paper like I was packing Christmas ornaments. The label on each box? Property of Jasmine Hale, temporary. Because even in my anger, I couldn't bring myself to be completely cruel. Though I did add a sticky note to the last box. Return to sender. Recipient no longer at this address. My phone rang while I was taping up the final box. Jasmine's number, of course. I'd been getting calls and texts for 3 days straight, the digital equivalent of that doorbell assault from Saturday. Apologies, explanations, promises to do better and fix this mess. This time, I answered. Marcus. Thank God. She said before I could even say hello. I've been trying to reach you. Your stuff's on the porch, I interrupted. Dry cleaning pickup is Thursday. The spare key is no longer spare, and the locks no longer recognize you. Have a nice life. Wait, please, can we just talk about this like adults? We are adults, Jasmine. Adults who are getting divorced. Adults who apparently want completely different things from life. Adults who probably should have figured this out before one of us decided to start shopping for upgrades. Silence on the other end. Then, I made a mistake. No, I said, looking out at the boxes on my porch. You made a choice. Multiple choices, actually. And now I'm making mine. I hung up and blocked her number. Clean break, surgical precision. No more second chances, no more benefit of the doubt, no more being the safe, boring, predictable husband who'd take whatever scraps of affection she felt like throwing his way. That evening, I sat in my newly purged living room with a beer and really looked at the space for the first time in years. Without Jasmine's touches everywhere. The throw pillows, the decorative vases, the framed inspirational quotes about living, laughing, and loving. The house looked bigger. Emptier, sure, but also somehow more honest. I pulled out my old sketchbook, the one I'd abandoned when I got serious about being a responsible adult with a career and a mortgage. The pages were yellowed and dusty, filled with drawings from back when I thought I might actually be an artist instead of a guy who analyzed other people's money for a living. I started sketching. Nothing fancy, just shapes and shadows and whatever came out of my pencil. For the first time in years, my hands moved without checking with my brain first. No analyzing, No second guessing. No wondering if what I was creating was good enough or practical enough or impressive enough. Just me, a pencil, and the quiet satisfaction of making something that was entirely mine. 3 weeks later, I woke up in a bedroom that actually felt like mine for the first time in 5 years. Gone was the beige paint Jasmine had insisted was sophisticated and calming. In its place, forest green walls that reminded me of hiking trails and camping trips and all the outdoor adventures I'd given up because she preferred room service to sleeping bags. I'd painted it myself over a long weekend, rolling on coat after coat while blasting music Jasmine used to complain about. Classic rock, blues, some punk from my college days. The soundtrack of a guy who was slowly remembering who he'd been before he'd tried to become the man he thought his wife wanted. The transformation was bigger than just paint, though. I'd bought a real desk, solid oak, the kind built to last, and set it up by the window where the morning light was perfect for drawing. My sketchbooks were stacked neatly beside it, filled with 3 weeks' worth of rediscovering what my hands could do when my brain wasn't micromanaging every line. Turns out I wasn't half bad at this art thing. Who knew? The divorce papers had been served. Jasmine's lawyer, some expensive shark in a suit that probably cost more than my car, had called Sarah with an offer to settle this amicably. Translation: Jasmine wanted to avoid a messy court case where everyone would get to see the home movie I'd accidentally starred in. Fine by me. I wasn't looking for revenge anymore. I was looking for freedom. The house sale was already in motion. Too many memories, too much shared history in every room. Besides, I discovered I didn't need 2,400 square feet to be happy. A smaller place, something that was mine from day one, sounded pretty damn appealing. With the equity from the house and my half of our savings, I had enough money to do something I'd been thinking about for weeks. Something that would have been impossible when I was playing the role of responsible married man with a mortgage and a wife who thought financial security was more important than personal fulfillment. I booked a trip to Spain. Solo. 3 weeks in Madrid, Barcelona, maybe some smaller towns if the mood struck me. I'd always wanted to see the Prado, walk through Park Güell, sit in sidewalk cafes and sketch strangers while drinking wine that didn't come from a grocery store aisle. Jasmine would have hated every minute of it. Too spontaneous, too unstructured, too risky for someone who planned our vacations 6 months in advance and color-coded our itineraries. Perfect. The flight left on a Tuesday morning in October. I sat in the window seat with my carry-on bag full of sketchbooks and charcoal pencils, watching Connecticut disappear below me like a chapter 1 was finally ready to close. Madrid was everything I'd imagined and nothing I'd expected. The city was alive in ways that made our suburban neighborhood feel like a museum exhibit. People stayed up late, ate dinner at 10 p.m., treated every day like it was worth celebrating instead of just surviving. I rented a small apartment in the Malasana district, nothing fancy, but with huge windows and hardwood floors that creaked in the most satisfying way. Every morning, I'd walk to a different cafe, order coffee and pastries in my terrible Spanish, and fill pages with drawings of everything I saw. Old men playing chess in the park. Street musicians with guitars held together by duct tape and dreams. Couples arguing passionately on corners, then making up just as dramatically 2 minutes later. The kind of raw, honest humanity I'd somehow forgotten existed while I was busy being a responsible adult. One morning, sitting on the rooftop terrace of a cafe in La Latina, watching the sunrise paint the city gold and orange, I took a photo. Not for anyone else, just for me. The view was too perfect not to capture, and for the first time in months, I felt like sharing something beautiful with the world. I posted it on Instagram with a simple caption: "Some endings don't need closure. Just a door that stays shut." Within an hour, I had likes and comments from friends I hadn't heard from in years. College buddies, old coworkers, people who'd apparently been wondering where I'd disappeared to. The Marcus they remembered, the guy who used to take risks, who laughed loud and loved art, and wasn't afraid to fail spectacularly, had been missing in action for so long they'd probably assumed he was dead. Turns out he'd just been buried under 5 years of trying to be someone else. My phone buzzed with a text notification. For a split second, my stomach tightened. Old habits die hard. But it wasn't Jasmine. She'd tried reaching out exactly once since the lawyers took over, and I deleted that message without reading it. This was from my buddy Jake from college, the guy who'd always said I should have pursued art instead of finance. Dude, is that really you? You look happy. Like, actually happy. I looked at the photo again. Me grinning like an idiot on a Spanish rooftop, sketchbook in one hand, coffee in the other. The whole city spread out below me like a promise of adventures yet to come. Yeah, I thought. That's really me. For the first time in 5 years, I was writing my own story. And it was turning out to be a hell of a lot more interesting than the one I'd been living.